Two. here and all who is listening to and watching on social media, radio, and television. Firstly, I want to apologize for the late start due to technical and human errors. Ladies and gentlemen, we call this press conference here today because we believe that there are some concerns that the general public should be made aware of. We met with the Minister of Overseas Territory and his team when he was here in February. He stressed the importance of government implementing substantially the recommendation of the COI report by the end of May. In order to avoid any further action, including the suspension of provisions in the Constitution, whereby giving the governor more constitutional powers. As an opposition, we have pledged our support in working with the government to implement those recommendations that we consider to be in the best interests of the people of these Virgin Islands. For example, we are presently considering amendments to the Register of Interest to make it stronger and public. The bill also considering adding public servants to the register, but only accessible to the governor and the deputy governor. We don't agree with this. If they are included in the register, then it should be either all public or all private. But we are for a public register. We were also made aware of the receipt of the CFATF report with its 40 recommendations on financial systems of the Virgin Islands. We were also made aware of the minister and her team immediate actions in getting some of these recommendations implemented. We believe that the Virgin Islands is and always have been a well-regulated, world-standard jurisdiction. We believe that as opposition, anything that we can assist the government in ensuring that the implementation of the recommendations are done in a speedy and efficient manner. But again, it must be in the interests of the people of these Virgin Islands. Fellow Virgin Islanders and those of you listening, we believe that we are at a crossroad and the report has outlined some serious implications for us. And it happened at the time, the report was done in 2023, at the perfect storm where COVID, a former premier being arrested for drug dealings, and all of these things create the perfect storm for the CFATF report to be extremely negative on us. So we are here not to bash the government, but to collaborate with the government to see how we can work together to make a jurisdiction once again proud place that people can do business both locally and internationally. So with those few words, in the interest of time, I will pass to Honorable Julian Fraser.
Thank you, and good afternoon. I'd like to first extend condolences to the family of Elena Matthias, who will be laid to rest on Friday, the 22nd. Particularly, I'd like to say condolence to her older sister, Irene Smith. Condolence to the family of Mr. Joseph Adolphus Roberts, who too will be laid to rest on Saturday, 23rd. Mr. Roberts, you all know, was a prominent accountant. He was living in Hannah's in the 3rd District, and he passed a few days back. And to the family of Attorney Jamal Smith, who was met with a most untimely death only a week ago. My condolences to those families and their friends. Second, I'd like to say that lions are often mischaracterized by their actions. When he sleep all day and have the lioness hunt for prey, we call him lazy. When the herd is threatened, he acts decisively, and more times than not, he ends up crushing the bones of the predator, usually a hyena, so we call him vicious. Last March, one of my political opponents with ulterior motives posed with me for a photograph and ended up posting it in social media with the caption, "Present and Future." Well, in April, exactly 1 month, the present became the future. In all my 25 years of serving the people of the 3rd District, never has my dedication and commitment to serve has been questioned, and I have no intention to allow it to start now. Concerned residents of the 3rd District, all with well intentions, have contacted me directly and indirectly, asking me if I am running for re-election, which I've found strange, to be honest, because in 6 terms I've served, that question has never been asked. My God, President Joe Biden is older than me. Former President Donald Trump is older than me, so it can't be about age. One of my constituents sent me this message, and this shall remain nameless. It says, "Good Sunday afternoon to you, Honorable Fraser. Trust all is well with you and yours. Question: have you indicated or intimated that you will not seek re-election at the next scheduled election? Somehow, I am getting vibes from a certain would-be candidate that seems to be sending such a message to the voters of the 3rd. What is going on?" I would not go into my response to that. I'm sure you will know it later. Prompted by this question and some other queries by others, I did some digging of my own, and I found a lot of reasons for people to be concerned. I found that this so-called would-be candidate often used my name in the phrase, "preserving the legacy of Honorable Julian Fraser," in their promotions, thus giving the appearance that of giving them an endorsement of sorts, suggesting, of course, that I am somehow not running. I want to tell the people of the 3rd District that I'm the person they elected to serve, and until and unless I say otherwise, anything you hear is just hot air. I further suggest that the use of my name be discontinued. It is obvious that people are being offended. Thank you.
A pleasant good afternoon. Thank you, Honorable Leader of the Opposition, honorable colleagues who are here with me today, the people of the Virgin Islands, and of course the members of the media who have graced us with their presence here this afternoon. And last but by no means least, the amazing people of the 8th District who have given me the privilege to serve them in this capacity in which I serve today and intend to serve going forward. Before I begin with my short presentation before we field questions from the media. I too would like to express condolences to some of the family members throughout the Virgin Islands and in fact in the Eastern Island community who's lost loved ones over the past weeks and months. Namely, we have a couple of funerals that are coming up in the name of Greg George, whose funeral is on Friday, and Carwell Potter, whose funeral is on next Tuesday. I want to extend condolences to their families and extended families, as well as the families that were mentioned by Honorable Fraser. As the leader opposition mentioned earlier, we've had several meetings, particularly with the overseas minister and persons in the House of Assembly speaking on some various issues. And one of those issues I'll tackle is the issue of the rest of interest, particularly for public officers. We've expressed, and I've expressed in the House, and the public servants have expressed that they have no challenge in terms of ensuring that there's a register in place, but a register which allows for them to be able to have the proper consultation on the process of allowing them to be on the register of interest. We've expressed to the government that we believe it is important as it was when the original register was brought to the House in 2022, that there needs to be proper consultation with the public servants if the terms of engagement is going to change to ensure that they and their families have assessed what those changes will be and how those changes will impact them and their families. We're still hopeful that the government would have those in-depth discussions. The bill is before the committee now, and that we're intending to go back to the House on the 26th to have those discussions surrounding the amendments that are being proposed. And there's still time to have those discussions, but I will implore public officers if there's some specific concerns that we should have that engagement or that conversation on those concerns to ensure that your concerns are felt and met within the proposed bill that's coming forth in the House of Assembly. Additionally, the issue of crime and security is an issue of great concern for many in this country, particularly surrounding the recent situation in Seacoast Bay. It was Seacoast Bay or on the Seacoast Bay side of the island, where we lost, to our district, we lost a prominent attorney in Jamal Smith. And I at this time extend condolences to his family and persons who know him as his friends and their supporters. We've expressed, and I've expressed in the House of Assembly, the need for the National Security Council to bring forth a national strategy on crime. I've also expressed the need for us as a House, as a whole House, to have a proper conversation on how we're going to address the issue of crime in this territory. I've posed that question to the Honorable Premier. I've asked them to move with haste, particularly with the sense of the public is feeling unsafe. In many instances, when you have one of the prominence of Mr. Smith, who could just be taken out at his home, people are feeling unsafe. People need to understand what is the strategy surrounding crime in this territory and the security of this territory. And all 13 members in the National Security Council need to have a proper conversation with the people of this territory on what our plans are to address the issue of crime in this territory. And that dovetails into the issue surrounding our economy. I am deeply concerned with the state of our economy, or the lack thereof, in terms of the sluggish nature of our economy. We're 4 months in, almost 4 months into this year, and it was uncovered a few months ago in the House of Assembly that our government, in the last budget cycle, allowed close to, at a minimum, over $50 million that was budgeted and collected that should have gone towards the development of our economy to go back to the Treasury and go unused. This is $50 million that could be used to deal with the failing and dilapidated public infrastructure. This is money that should have been used to address the water woes that persons within our constituencies and this entire territory complain about year in, day in, after day. This is money that should have gone in the height in the peak of the hurricane, about to head into the hurricane season. Yet our drains and our water woes are still not addressed. We're still at a point where, in this new budget cycle, 4 months in, we're not seeing the activity on the ground. We're in the middle of the tourism season, yet the place is unkept. As one taxi driver told me on the beach the other day, that the bush is pulling the tourists out of that bus when they pass across going through the communities. They're splashing them on the roads when they drive through some communities. And the road continues, and the deterioration of the infrastructure continues under the watch of this government. So we are well on our way to allow more monies to go back into the treasury, and we're no closer to addressing the failing infrastructure in this territory because this government obviously has no plan. They lack the capacity to get the works budgeted executed, and the people are the ones who are suffering. The businesses who would need that fund to circulate within the economy, the single mothers and the families who are struggling, who needs the necessary support to help them to challenge some of these difficult times that we're faced with as a country. The small businesses, we were promised a National Business Bureau. We're now going into April. No business bureau, limited funding to even give any kind of technical supports or even soft loans or financial supports to businesses who definitely need a shot in the arm in this current environment, but yet over $50 million of budgeted funds that were collected went back into a treasury, and this government still seems to don't have a clue how to move forward. Leader of the opposition, I'll give my opportunity to my colleagues an opportunity to give their concerns, and I'll wait for any questions the media might have at this time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, colleagues. Good afternoon to the listening public and the media. Today I would like to stand in agreement with the remarks given by the leader of the opposition, where the register of interest, which is aligned with recommendation B4 of the Commission of Inquiry's report. In the last sitting of the House, I gave my remarks where that was concerned, and I will release a video to the public so they can see what I said. Today I want to focus similarly where my colleague for the 8th Honorable Penn focused on, which is crime. Where have we gone wrong in our territory? We have broad daylight robberies, murders, and other criminal acts. As a people, we have been hardworking and considerate of each other. When we look within our community, many of us still possess these qualities, but a disregard for law and life has crept in among us. I am not here to blame anyone, but rather state that we are all well aware of what is happening in our country and how things have changed. Today, I am calling for stiffer laws on gun crimes, more rehabilitation in our prisons, conflict resolution, and more focused programming in our communities, and above all, for the private and public sectors to invest in creating careers for our most vulnerable, and in particular for our young boys and men. Over the past 5 years, we have seen how many of our young men have been gunned down or gone missing, and we all speculate as to why it happened, what caused it, but many of us are aware of what is going on. It is time to face the reality that our country is becoming like other places where we would say, wow, how can they live in a country like that? Now, many would say that our crime rate is not as high as other countries, but I would say it is higher than what we want it to be. It is time for us to be more comprehensive and realistic in our approach to crime deterrence. There has been many initiatives by the police, community policing, gun amnesty, and other measures, but these have not targeted the root of the matter, in my opinion. I do not have all the answers, but we as a community can figure it out. I am willing to do my part, and more information as to what I propose will be forthcoming in the coming months. In October of last year, the Premier stated that we would have an anti-crime summit within the first quarter of 2024, which is fast approaching. Today, I call on the Premier to move with haste on this initiative and others. I call on the National Security Council, of which none of us are members, to move swiftly on addressing the concerns of citizens. We must address how our youth view crime and the realities that that road will lead them down. We are a small country, and because of that, we can get things done. We get things done in this country when we want to get them done. We need to get this done. Now, I released a Marathon Minute a few weeks ago discussing PAC, the Public Accounts Committee. In February, I traveled to Trinidad with three of my colleagues to this conference that was held, a Commonwealth Regional Conference in Trinidad. Now, the BVI is an anomaly where PAC is only made up of opposition members. The conference provided an opportunity to engage with colleagues in the region and the wider Commonwealth to learn of best practices and difficulties, ways to work around those difficulties. Now, it is unfortunate that no government representative is on the PAC locally, but I'm calling on the leader of opposition and my colleagues to consider what is done in other jurisdictions, which is to engage experts in our community to sit among us in the PAC committee, where their skills and their credibility can be lent to this committee. The country deserves a committee that is driven by fairness and also appears fair. If there cannot be a government member on the committee, then allow this to be a demonstration of good governance. In closing, I am committed to represent the best interests of the entire Virgin Islands as an elected representative. I am not convinced that any one person can move our country forward in a direction that is needed. Once again, I say to the people of this territory, voice your concerns. It is said that a closed mouth does not get fed. Well, silence also shows agreement. In the Virgin Islands, it is not where the Virgin Islands is where it should open your mouth and say something about the things that need changing, but also praise the good when it is done. Jamal was a mine from the class of 1994. It is very unfortunate what was done to him in our territory. We have to open our mouths and say what we know. Today, the Virgin Islands can say we have a low crime rate, but growing up in the Virgin Islands, this was not the country I came to love. We have to put an end to it. Attacking people who are committing the crimes, that is one way of dealing with crime. But deterrence is making sure that our youth are not seeing this road as the road or the path they should take in our country. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Thank you to my colleagues, to the media present, and those listening online. Good afternoon to the people of the Virgin Islands. I too want to start by extending my condolences to those families that have lost loved ones due to crime and violence, and even those in my community that are bereaved and going through this difficult time. Most recently, Mr. Kelvin Lloyd, as we knew him, but his name that he carried was Kelvin Hodge. To his entire family, I give and extend my condolences to you. We also buried a young man on Saturday, Mr. Carlos Sutherland, who was gunned down in his mother's house in Trinidad, and he was later arrested here in the BVI on Saturday past. Which takes me to three questions that I want to ask. First is, who and whose are we in this BVI? So the thought that self-love and God's love and your worth is oftentimes overlooked by the power of your own internal dialogue and the way in which we view ourselves. Self-love and our knowledge and our worth have a tremendous impact on everything that we will ever produce in our lives. It is usually easy for us to be labeled by persons or our profession, affiliations, or the events that may have occurred in our lives. For example, we may say, I am a teacher, I am an electrician, I am a student. We even define ourselves by our affiliations. I am a Rotarian, I am a member of this organization or that organization. Or we sometimes focus on our gifts. I am a singer, I'm a writer, I'm a speaker. Or I'm not doing as well based on a situation or circumstance going on in my country. For example, blacklisting, the COI, the negative light that is being shown on our BVI. But it's oftentimes when we allow these things or people to define us, as soon as the title changes, the affiliation turns into affliction. or the gift isn't working as it should, we lose our sense of self-worth. What happens when that thing that we once defined us is removed? Our purpose is removed from it, and we're asking, where do we go? We have been called a lot of things in this BVI. We have been labeled a lot of different names and have to overcome a lot of different obstacles. And the question is, who are we? Are we still the same BVI that was founded on a foundational principle that we were going to build a country by empowering each other, educating ourselves, and putting laws in place to protect the well-being of future generations? I want to take this time to express gratitude to the people of the country, and especially my 2nd District community, for allowing me to be your servant by putting your trust and confidence in me, and continue to be your voice and agent of change, not only in the district, but this entire BVI. When we talk about crime, it is almost seemingly that we are experiencing crime in our territory as something that is becoming normal. While Honorable Meta spoke about being in Trinidad, I listened to the news while we were there, and they were talking one night about how many murders happened for the day. Talk about 4 happened in one place and 2 in another place, and then they went on to the weather like it was nobody business. But crime and the acts of crime are happening in the BVI, and we are becoming more and more silent about it. We are becoming, because it's not touching our doorsteps, we're not saying enough about it. One of the things that I learned is that hate is educational. When people are threatened by your potential, it's because they believe in it. If you do nothing, they will be forced to see that potential realized. The BVI has a potential that is hated upon. And if we just leave that voice and that hate to permeate, then we will continue to become what society is saying that we are. In this BVI, I believe that we are still in a very, very critical stage where we've met with the UK minister. Now this would be the 3rd UK minister that I would have met with from 2022 to present. We've seen now 3 governors. We've seen different premiers. And the question is, how did we get here? How did we get to a place that our people are becoming hopeless? How did we get to a place where our leadership is not leading and people are losing confidence in the leaders that we have elected? How did we get to a place that we are increasing budgets but productivity is minimal? How do we get to a place where you come into any one of our ports and drive through our country and all you see is bush and dirt and potholes? How did we get to that place that we were once world leaders and now are falling behind every other jurisdiction or territory in our surrounding oceanic space? How did we get there? We got there because there is no plan. Leadership dictates that you must have a vision. You must have the ability to make a decision. You must be disciplined, and you must have passion about what you're doing. I believe this territory has lacked that. And here, sitting in the opposition, what we pledged to the UK minister and what we pledged as it relates to the COI implementations, as it relates to the governance of this territory, that we will support this present government in ensuring that these things are implemented to the best of our knowledge. But we also have a job to do, which is to hold the government to account and ensure that they are doing right by people, that they are making decisions in the best interest that has an impact on the lives of the Virgin Islands people. So where we go from here? Where we go from here is we need to look at where we are. We need to look at who we are and determine how we're going to get there. And how we do that is simply remembering where we came from, remembering the fight and the battles that we have overcome, remembering that crime and violence, the way it's been happening in this territory, is not the norm and will never be the norm. And we must always push against the grain when it comes to any system, any entity, or any body, for that matter of fact, that is pushing or trying to keep us in a place that we are not progressing. We have constitutional review, we have the register of interest, we have all these laws that are supposed to be advancing our territory. If we don't push ahead and ensure that these systems and institutions are built, then we will continue to be falling back. But I believe we need leaders that have the ability, that have the gumption, that have the foresight to make decisions in the best interests of people, not be intellectual, but be action oriented to seeing results that people can now push you to the next level. So here in the opposition, I stand with my colleagues, and we're going to be doing just that, pushing forward to ensure that the people of the Virgin Islands realize that change that is desperately needed to move our territory forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Leader of the Opposition. Good afternoon to the people of the Virgin Islands, particularly the good people of District 6, on whose behalf I make representation in the House of Assembly on domestic district matters and on national matters. There are a myriad of pressing issues that the opposition continues to bring to the attention of the public. In fact, the vast majority of concerns that we have raised are concerns that you, the public, have brought to our attention, with the hopes that we will bring these matters to the fore with a view to having them corrected. The current bill before the House of Assembly, the Register of Interest Amendment Bill, which seeks to establish a register for public officers requiring heads of departments, deputy secretaries, and persons in grades 19 to 21 to register their interests, is one of those matters which have been brought to the attention of the opposition. There are several major legislative and fundamental rights issues that were not given due care and attention when this bill was being contemplated. Firstly, the bill does not establish a structure for compliance by those who are required to establish their interest. When should this interest be registered once the bill has been passed? Who will be the custodian of this register? Does the request to register include family members, and to what degree? What are the sanctions in the event a public officer does not comply on time or does not comply at all? These are all questions that the public officers have, which confirms their assertion that there was not adequate consultation on the bill. I would like to make it pellucidly clear that I am a strong proponent of good governance. I fervently believe that those persons who are key decision makers and who handle government resources should be held to account for their stewardship. I'm also a strong proponent of human rights, and in particular, the right to privacy. And I am against any unnecessary and disproportionate incursions on those rights. In striking a balance between these two essential interests, good governance and the right to privacy, I am of the strong opinion that at its highest, public officers should be asked to declare any private, financial, or non-financial interests of their own
or immediate family members, which may be perceived to conflict with their public duties. To require carte blanche declarations of the interests of public officers, in my view, is excessive. Additionally, from my research that was conducted, and I stand to be corrected, the Register of Interests of Public Officers in the UK is administrative in nature and not embedded in legislation as is being proposed now by this government. The amendment, which is now in the committee stage, which has only a few clauses, seeks to force itself into the substantive act passed from members of the House of Assembly, which it was not designed for. Any attempt to make substantial changes to the bill during the committee stage will be contrary to well-established legislative procedures and will defeat the purpose of the first reading of the bill, which is to make the public aware of what law is being enacted and to allow for their feedback. In this case, the bill that would have received its first reading would be fundamentally different from the one that would have been passed by the House of Assembly. This is wrong. This raises a matter of concern, which I mentioned previously, that the current government is not taking their legislative responsibilities seriously. The excuse provided in the House of Assembly that the bill is the governor's bill is a failed attempt to cover up what could only be described as sheer incompetence. This bill should have never been brought to the House of Assembly to ask legislators to support in its deficient state. I urge the government to listen to the views of the public officers, particularly since ostensibly this is a change of the terms and conditions of employment, as it was not in place when the public officers commenced employment. To them, it might be a box-ticking exercise to fulfill the COI recommendations. But for the public officers, it is a career decision, since you may have many persons who may not wish to subject themselves to this level of scrutiny. The debacle that I have just described above has become characteristic of a government, in my view, that has gone beyond their best-by date. The COI recommendations were accepted in their entirety without any proper consideration for their effects and the issues involved in their implementation. This is evidenced by the constant missed deadlines and the arbitrary and rushed approach that has become commonplace with this administration. Too many important decisions are being made without consulting with the people. The people of the Virgin Islands have yet to be asked their views on further self-determination, yet we have a UN group coming to the territory to ascertain our readiness. Plans are currently afoot to seek full CARICOM membership without any consultation with the people. Do the people of the Virgin Islands know all that is entailed in moving from an associate member to a full member of CARICOM? We are elected to work for the people, and it is incumbent upon us to consult with them, particularly on these weighty matters that will affect their lives. We are moving towards the second quarter of the government's fiscal year, and on April 24, 2024, will mark 1 year since the re-election of this now two-term government. We still have an ailing economy with absolutely nothing happening to stimulate its growth. We have had a solid middle class in this country for years, and now many of those persons are literally on the poverty line with no jobs, and many are finding it hard to make ends meet. The echoes for access to reliable supply of potable water are becoming louder with no relief in sight. There are daily complaints of leaking pipes which cause great inconvenience to our citizens, and there are still many places in this country, including District 6, where the water distribution network has not been extended to their homes so that they could get potable supply, a reliable supply of water. In this year's budget, a mere $100,000 was placed to address the water woes, but I'm absolutely certain that the recently announced Music Fest will cost the government far more than this, with very little returns, considering the very short window between the announcement of the event and its scheduled date. This government has their priorities all mixed up. Our roads are still in a state of disrepair. Small businesses are on life support. All this is happening on our shores while we watch our neighboring Caribbean islands securing inward investment, particularly in the hospitality industry, and creating thousands of jobs and increasing the government's revenue so that they can improve their services to their nationals. Just last week, the Turk and Caicos Islands announced the opening of a new Marriott resort in 2025. While they were making this announcement, our government was announcing a board for the defunct Prospect Reef Hotel. It is still unclear exactly what this board will be doing with this dilapidated property. It is time for an about turn before we squander the inheritance of the next generation. Our country, which was once a leader in tourism and hospitality, is now lagging behind most of its competitors. The confidence of the public in this government is at an all-time low, and in these instances, it is incumbent upon the opposition to show the displeasure of the public by activating the appropriate parliamentary device on their behalf. I think we are now at this point. These are my initial remarks at today's press conference. Thank you very much.
So we now open the floor for questions. Madam Moderator.
Good afternoon, Guavaberry Media. Cindy, Roseanne. Can you clarify what is meant by the Deputy Governor and Governor having access to the Register of Interest? Does that mean that that portion in relation to public officers is not public and only accessible to or by the Deputy Governor and Governor?
That is correct.
So the public doesn't have access to but
You will only have access to members.
okay. All right, so would you say the government is failing? Opposition members?
They're doing a good job of demonstrating that they can't get anything done.
So they're failing.
I guess that's the words you can use.
All righty. So, what is the opposition?
Can I help you?
Sure.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
I'll add a bit to your analogy. If they have any understanding at all as to how to run government, they're doing a very good job at hiding it.
All righty. So then, my follow-up question is, what is the opposition's next move? Seeing that the government is good at talking, will you guys be talking too for the next 3 years?
I think, Cindy, we came to this press conference today. There were a lot of issues, and you heard quite a bit of them. And it's for us to sit together as a group and decide the way forward.
But when you guys have done that already, it's a year and a half. It's a year and a half. It's a year and 3 months, which means a year and a half. Yeah, a year and a half.
So it's so quick you want us to get rid of us?
No, I do not want to get rid of you guys, but I'm trying to understand if we're gonna have these press conferences, the entire public can see that the government is failing. So I'm speaking from a journalist, and I'm speaking from a voter, and I'm speaking from a citizen and a resident. We can all see the conversation is everywhere. So what I want to know is, because you guys make up almost half, so it's not like the house is split in a top-heavy way. What is the next move? Are we just going to keep talking, or is there a way to shut this down, even if we have to go back to the polls? What is the answer? Or are we talking for the next 3 years? I mean, I
If,
can do that. I'm good at
no,
that.
if what is happening continues, we will not be talking for the next 3 years. We will probably have to move a vote of no confidence in the government. Can we win? They have 7, we have 6. But it at least will bring pressure to bear on them by us and plus the public.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Rush Skinner. It's good. Rush Skinner, BVI Beacon. So to members Penn, Turnbull, and Frazier, the so-called greedy bill enables you three to qualify for your salaries to be given after you leave office for up to 3 years after you retire, as I'm sure you know. The Premier has committed to not taking this. Will you three
Answer.
commit similarly?
Are you speaking from a position of knowledge, or are you just assuming that what you said is correct?
I'm speaking from a position of knowledge, sir.
Well, your knowledge was incorrect. You pick on 3 of us, and it's 5 of us, 6 of us here. And I submit to you that all 6 of us are eligible to benefit from that bill. So I suggest you check your facts.
It was my understanding that. Moving on. Mr. Leader, do you believe it's right to have former Premier Andrew Foy's photo hanging up on the wall of Assembly?
You're asking me as a leader of the opposition now. Remember that.
Yes, sir, I'm aware.
So I'm going to answer you. Until there is regulations or a piece of legislation that governs what happened to the memorabilia of members when they have been convicted of serious crimes, then I don't think I can take it down. But I think the questions you're asking warrant us as legislators to start thinking seriously about what happens to the memorabilia of members if they're convicted of heinous crimes such as, putting the country in disrepute. Yeah. So I think the question you're asking is what happens from here in. Because yes, as a private citizen, some of us could go up there and remove it, but that's not how it works.
I agree. I suppose I would be asking if there's appetite for consideration, and I suppose you answered that.
I think based on what happened, it needs to have a discussion, but you can't go backward. You have to go forward.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Ron Grant of 284 Media. I want to begin with the leader of the opposition. And I'm asking you this because you served as the former Minister for Finance. Honorable Marlon Penn spoke about some money going back to the Treasury. Based on my research, that happens. It happens, based particularly when, for example, capital projects aren't met. This number of 50 million seems to be a bit exorbitant. In your experience as former finance minister, having now witnessed this as leader of the opposition, what are your thoughts on some $50 million being returned to the Treasury when, like the Honorable Minister for the 6th District says, we are wary for quite a bit to be done within the public sphere?
Ron, my colleague from the 8th asked the questions to each individual minister, and they confirmed the number. So when he added together, it came up to be, I think he has it at 50 million. I never added together. But if the government at that point in time had collected the revenue that was projected and the budget was what it's supposed to be, when it was approved, then yes, there is $50 million someplace.
My colleague, what my colleague just mentioned, I want to make it clear in terms of, and that's at a minimum, because when I asked the question, it was about the minister, the premier's off, the premier, the minister for health, the minister for works, and I think the minister for education. It didn't include the minister of financial services. What also didn't happen, I didn't get the information on the statutory organizations, nor did I get the recurrent expenditure that wasn't spent. So it could be far in excess of $50 million, which I think it is. And I've asked for that information to come forward. The point is that I raised some points, and my colleague for the six raised some points where you were saying to us that you cannot fix the water issues within our community because you don't have enough money. But here it is, over $50 million gone back into the treasury. You're saying to us the reason why the roads, the main roads, the side roads in our communities, the bush is not being cleaned, and all these things are not being done because you don't have the money. But you budgeted $60 million. They were able to go back and have what they call budget reallocations. We've come back to the house and have what we call mini budget, where they've reallocated funds for projects where they don't think those projects will be executed. They had an opportunity, 6 months into that administration, they had an opportunity to see that these projects were not going to be executed. We shuffle that money into areas where we had dire needs, not just for the infrastructure, but for the social needs and issues of this country. We have people who are struggling on a daily basis. There's a need to get support to these families and these single mothers who sometimes can barely pay their rent or put food on the table for their families. But you're sending money back into the treasury. It's incompetence. They're incapable of getting the job done, and we need to do better.
And that was my question to the honorable honorable favor. Go ahead.
Can I just lend some insight to this money that's going back to the treasury? As a member for the eight pointed out, which is apparent to everyone, that there is incompetence. It's surrounded by incompetence, yes. But this opposition, and every opposition, has a responsibility to hold the government accountable. And part of that accountability is to ensure that those funds that has been appropriated are being used. Now, I've been advocating for a while. Yes, we do have a public accounts committee, and the world over, public accounts committee are number one. They are absolutely necessary, and when they function, they get results. But public accounts committees deals in postmortems. They deal with money that has already been spent years ago. In our case, I think the last audited books were 2017. So that's what they look at, scrutinize those things. And I've been advocating for us to have a public accounting and appropriations committee which deals with the present. All the monies that were appropriated for 2024, we would have gone through the budget in the Public Accounting and Appropriation Committee to see if those monies are being spent, are being used. And if they haven't been used, we'll be raising Cain on the government. Right now, we have a program called Rated. We ended the year having those people out there cleaning up the community, the Rated program. Ended the year doing it, hoping that as soon as the year turned, we would move right back into it and keep the community clean. Would you imagine that, or believe that 3 months have gone and not a single soul has been out there working in that program? Those are the kind of things that we're talking about. What's going to happen to that money? It's never going to get spent. It's going back into the treasury, and that's a simple example. What my colleague is talking about too is, as far as districts are concerned, we are all issued or appropriated some monies for infrastructure. $300,000. See, it's down to 200 now. I dare you to go out there on the street and find one single project that any one of us in our district has on the ground. We have designs, we have all kinds of things, but we can't get the projects done. We can't get them on the ground. So I think that collectively, and you can't take away what has been established. I what I said to the government, what I say about the government, they're all educated people, they're smart people. I like them all, but what they're suffering from is impotence. And if they can't get that job done that they've been, funny thing is that the people out there, I can't blame them. I can't say that people are getting what they deserve because those people didn't elect them to be the government. It's us they elect to be the government. But something happened. But you would check that out and see what it is later. But that's a position that I hold as far as we need a public accounting and appropriation committee in order to get those monies spent.
I support all of what is being said by my colleagues, but at the heart of it as well is a lack of planning. Most of us around this table have been ministers at one point or another. And after a general election, when you have your manifesto, which you campaigned on, you're supposed to take that manifesto because you're supposed to deliver that manifesto over the 4-year period. That's why, for instance, during the campaign, we constantly was bringing to the attention of the public that they were not campaigning really. They were not discussing their plans because from that point they had no plans. If you had proper plans, you would take your manifesto, you divide it over the 4-year period that you have. You break it out and you have your strategic plan for each year and you execute your projects. You see it coming to the fore every single time. For instance, the tourism industry is the main economic driver in this community. I've asked the Premier, and many of us have asked the Premier, for a tourism plan. Up to now, he has not been able to deliver one. The former Premier, about 3 years ago, said that he gave the responsibility to the now education minister, who was a junior minister, to get a tourism plan forward. We're now 3 years later. I asked the Premier quite recently, where is the economic plan? None has been produced, no plan for tourism. There's no economic plan. That's why nothing is happening on the ground in terms of projects. You even have the RDA available there to you. So even if you have issues in terms of capacity within your ministry, the RDA is there to assist you in executing the projects once you know what it is you want to execute and you have your plans properly organized. We just heard a Freudian slip from the mouth of the junior minister of agriculture when he said that there's no agriculture plan. I mean, he's a man of the cloth, so he tells the truth. There is no plan. And constantly, as you go around, you see that, and if you have no plan, it hampers your execution because you have not given due consideration to what you're supposed to do. And that's what the end result is, exactly what Honorable Penn is saying. The money goes back into the treasury while you have high unemployment in the country. I mentioned just the other day that the changes being brought by the COI, some of them are affecting the economy. We have to be honest about it. Even though we have to make the changes to improve our structures, it is incumbent upon the Minister of Finance, upon the government, okay, if I do this, this is going to affect this. What can I do to help my people within the confines or the new construct to make sure that they do not end up on the poverty line? We remove the petty contract system. The procurement process is extremely difficult, and you end up now with no economic stimulus passing through the community. You're looking at neighboring Caribbean countries, you're seeing everybody bringing in a new hotel, 2 and 3 and so on, moving along. Our Premier flies up and down the place. He has $3 million in travel, but he comes back off the plane with his hands empty. Nothing new to bring to the economy of the country. And that's why I said to you, I was speaking to you, leader of the opposition, that when we hear the cries of the people, there's a particular device that we as the opposition must activate on their behalf, because we're at that point.
I also want to lend my voice to join in with the members that have spoken, and I've said this from the jump street: if you are not prioritizing your priorities, then you'll get undone. Honorable Walwin even highlighted it further because you don't know what your priorities are because you don't have a plan. And tourism, as he says, I come from where my district is in the second district. We are bragging now on how many guests and how many ships and how many persons are touching the shores of the BVI. But what are you bringing them to? What is the experience? The road's bad. The bush them's are hauling you out. The cleanliness of our territory. And then when you go through as persons returning as residents of the BVI or belongers of this territory, and you see some 6, almost 7 years now since the hurricanes of 2017, that the government still can't get back into the administrative complex, and we are paying in addition to the monies that the $50 million that return, we are paying monies to rent all over the place, $10 million a year, and nothing is happening. Nothing is happening. So we see, I believe what we're seeing here in the opposition is what we're seeing is a government that is waiting for the next episode of something to happen so that they could react to, because there's no plan to drive them forward and bring the people along with them. So in the opposition, I believe we are all charged and ready to make the next steps, to bring to the forefront what the people of this territory are thinking and saying.
I want to go back to my second question, moving right along. Many of you, spoke very eloquently about the Register of Interest Act. Honorable Walwyn, you articulated some details. My simple question is, public servants have already voiced their concerns, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, in a formal correspondence. They have already, in essence, said we're open to change, but there's some things that we want to see addressed, right? We still, however, gentlemen, see this bill being brought in its exact form to the House of Assembly. So the civil servants have spoken. Grades 9 to 12, Honorable Walwyn, you said.
No, 9 to 21.
9 to 21. 19 to 21. Correct, right? Where are we supposed to go from here? Public servants who walk day in and day out. Where are we supposed to go from here as it pertains to articulating the voices of these concerns? Because if they've written a correspondence to share their concerns, you're speaking about it in the House, you're speaking about it again here, as to the severe impact that this bill will have on civil servants and the wider country, but particularly to civil servants. And we're still forging ahead as opposition members.
No, we're not forging ahead.
No, the government is forging ahead as opposition members. Because if you bring up a bill to the House, that means you're forging ahead with it. If there are no amendments. Am I correct?
If there's no amendment,
Correct.
yes.
There are no
correct.
serious amendments to
Yes.
the bill. That means you're forging ahead. Not
Yes.
you as the opposition, but the government. The
Yes.
question is, as opposition members, in defending the public service, where do we go from here?
One of the things, based on what you heard today, is that we will ask, and this is an open invitation to the Civil Service Association to meet with us before the 26th, so we can have a discussion with them. They wrote a letter to the government. The government shared that letter with us. So that letter could have been sanitized. It could be all kind of stuff going to happen to it. So we are willing to sit and listen to the Civil Service Association to give us a better picture, a more concrete picture of exactly what they would like to see happen. Now, from where I sit as a member of the House, and if you read before recommendation, it clearly states that a register of interest for members should be implemented. And thereafter, based on experience, then you can consider to add the civil servants to it. That's what the recommendation says. So I don't know where the addition of civil servants needs to be done immediately.
I want to support you with that too, Leader of the Opposition. immediately and be made mandatory, because the wording, as you said, is to consider,
Yeah.
right? Now, the Civil Service Association sent a letter that we had we had sight of on the same evening when the bill was being considered. I want you to take a look. I should have brought a copy for you, but the bill can be found easily, the amendment. It has about 3 or 4 clauses to it. I don't know if any of y'all have seen it. It's absolutely ridiculous. There is nothing in the bill. It simply makes some cosmetic changes in areas to say public officer and substitute member for public officer. It has no structure whatsoever. It doesn't tell the officers anything. So that's why I went at length in my deliberations to highlight it, because it shows a government that don't read, don't understand anything. You hear the excuse that it's the governor's bill. The governor could bring a bill to cabinet. It is the members of cabinet that approve the bill to come forward. Somebody should have read that bill and said what we are bringing to the House of Assembly is pure foolishness. And clearly they're not paying attention to their responsibilities. They mentioned that they consulted with the public service. When you listen to what the consultation was, they said they consulted at the heads of department meetings. But you can't consult just at the heads of department meetings. You are making a change within a structure for persons who will matriculate to those positions and at some point be captured. So your consultation has to be wider than just the people who are immediately in the position. You have to consult with everybody, because you are ostensibly changing the terms and conditions of employment of persons, and you are also affecting their privacy rights. They would have signed on to work with you for a certain amount of years. They didn't know that they have to open up their whole business and how wide they have to open it and how does it extend. The conundrum that we have found ourselves in, and the opposition is willing to help as much as it can, is that the COI has raised a number of deficiencies in the way in which we do things. We fought, or the government said they fought, so that we can make sure we maintain our legislative authority and don't have the partial suspension. You can't turn around and do the wrong thing to try to save something else. If the bill had its first reading, you can't now go in the committee stage and come with a whole brand new bill. It is just legislatively wrong, because the bill that would have been gazetted for consumption and feedback, you have now brought a totally different bill for people, and that is not the purpose of the committee stage. So we're in quite a quandary. We're in quite a quandary right now. I don't know on the 26th what we are going to do, but to certainly go in there and try to create a structure for that bill in the House of Assembly is completely wrong, and we shouldn't be doing that. We need to take the time to hear what the civil servants have to say, pull the bill back, and bring it back. But bring back a proper bill that makes sense and that could work. If you're just interested in ticking a box to tell the COI, oh yes, we tick a box, but the thing ain't functioning, who you're fooling? You're not improving our country.
Ron, if I may add, this bill, in my opinion, as I said in House of Assembly, and Honorable Wong echoed it, is like a copy and paste. You took out one, you put in the other. My concern is that if you look at B4, it says senior civil servants, public servants, then it goes on to the rest of the public service. So are we going to copy and paste that same thing and put it down again? Are we going to then move it to statutory bodies without getting it right? So when you ask the question, what is the next step? Where does the opposition stand? We're going back into the House. We should be going into the committee stages. Yeah, and this is where this will be discussed. But there is nothing stopping the government right now from negotiating, figuring things out, and saying, you know what, we're going to pump the brakes on this. We're going to fix it. We've heard what those senior civil servants are saying, and if they have a concern, what about the ones that now fall below them? won't the concern be louder? So it's incumbent upon them to say, we need to fix this. We can't take this like we've drafted it, put it there, then start duplicating it all the way down. Because as B4 says, and Honorable Turnbull has said it many times, consider it. Consideration does not mean you have to do it. It also says that it needs to be established. It needs to be evaluated. And as I said in the House of Assembly, where is the documentation to show that it has been evaluated?
On to my third question. It might be my final question, but some folks kept me waiting, so we're gonna be patient with me too. Okay, I'm gonna take my time. Okay. Let's take a matter of the festival. We're celebrating our 70th anniversary in this essence, and most recently was announced that the BVI Tourist Board is now spearheading the festival and fairs activities. It's a twofold question, and I'm gonna get to the second part. But as members, are you in support of this switch? And when it comes to the terms being thrown around as it pertains to accountability and transparency, what are your sentiments with the 70th anniversary being thrust so quickly into a different entity, for lack of a better phrase?
And then you go. Ron, it's wrong. I don't know what they're trying to achieve by handing it over to the tourist board, but there is a law in place that says who shall run festival. And if you did not repeal that law, then you're acting antivirus to what should happen in law. But I think my colleague Malon, he did a lot of research on it. So I will let him add in the details.
I think my colleague, thank you, Leader of the Opposition, and Ron, I want to support the comments made by my colleague. And this seems to be a trend by this government. They continue to talk about transparency, accountability, and good governance when it's convenient. When it's convenient to them. We had a situation with the Trade Commission not too long ago. The member made a decision to not pay it, to continue to run the Trade Department, ignoring the Trade Commission. I sounded the alarm saying, look, you're operating ultra-virus to the law. Next House meeting, they're full speed in the House with an amendment to suspend the Trade Commission because we called them out on what they were doing. Here we go again with the Festival Committee. The entity that is responsible for festival is the Festival and Fairs Committee. The Premier got up in the House and misled the public, saying that tourism or tourist board has responsibility over cultural and festivals. There's nowhere in Cap 280 that speaks to having that authority. The tourist board could barely execute its current authority that it has right now, and you're putting additional authorities on top of the tourist board to do things that are illegal. It's operating illegal. We're heading into the Easter Festival. Planning is taking place, and the government is not making any strides to make the necessary changes to the legislative framework to accommodate what they're trying to do. The Festival and Fairs Act legally establishes what is called the fund that governs the financing of festival and how the monies are put in that fund and how the monies are taken out of that fund. The Premier, through his cabinet, said they're going to transfer the funds to Tourist Board. They have zero authority to transfer those funds to Tourist Board. Here it is again. The government is going to mess with public funds without having the authority. The reserve fund, if you want to take money from the reserve fund, there are rules in how which money could be removed and transferred from these funds, these legally established funds. So I'm asking some questions, additional questions in the House of Assembly on the 28th on this matter, because the Premier has to be consistent in terms of his rhetoric about accountability, transparency, and good governance, and not just when it's convenient to him and what he wants to do. He seems to like these parties. He had a $250,000 one for a plane coming here. We now have another music fest coming up, another big party that he seems to like to push through the tourist board because he gets his parties done quicker. He doesn't have to account to anyone. in terms of central government and audit process. So he goes through the tourist board and sends the money over there and keeps his parties. And now he wants to, the biggest festival continues to run us $2 million plus a year. You're gonna push $2 million through of the public funds that you can't get the main things that you need to do for the territory over to the tourist board again with zero accountability and transparency with the process. It is wrong, and I call on the premier to do the. I mean, at the end of the day, he has the authority, but do it right. Elections have consequences. I continue to say this, and we're seeing the consequences of our actions by electing this government into office.
How did you do the wrong thing?
Yes, well, let me correct that. He has the authority to do things the right way. If he wants to make the change, come to the House, make the change. You have the majority, make the change. Even though we disagree, but that's a consequence of an election and electing a leader.
If I may just chime in with Honorable Penn and Honorable Skelton, the question that I asked opening is how do we get here? How did we get here? And if you look at it, insanity is doing the same thing and expecting a different result. 2019, we saw the same pattern. Eroding systems without understanding why they were put in place. The systems were put in place, the Festival Affairs Committee was put in place for accountability to protect you from your own self. You erode systems, you remove people, you dismantle boards, and you appoint your own, and it led to COI. Now you're trying to correct these same things, but in haste of, as a member said, checking boxes, you're still now going behind the bushes doing the same thing. What do you think we're going to end up? We in the opposition will not tolerate this government doing the same exact things that got us to this point where we are fighting for the maintenance and the constitutional advancement that we have fought for and our foreparents have fought for, because they want to do it the way they want to do it. If you don't understand a thing, take the time to read it, take the time to understand. And if you don't understand, ask a question. There's enough of us here that take the time to read and understand that will help you move our country forward. But doing it this way will not be tolerated.
I want to support Ron just very quickly. The views expressed by my colleagues, and especially Honorable Penn. I think he has a very good grasp of the issues in relation to Festival Affairs Committee and the Tourist Board. But what I would be interested in hearing, though, from the Premier is what would be the reason for moving festival to the Tourist Board. I think there has to be that has to be explained to the public, because it defies common sense. I was a minister of the festival for 8 years, so I understand the difficulties and the complexities involved in running festival and fairs. A number of the persons who have the institutional experience and knowledge are no longer on the board. Many of the subcommittee members and so on are not there. It's a mammoth task, particularly the 70th. How are you going to fit that into the tourist board with the current role that they have? That, you know, they have quite a bit to do, and there's a lot more to do. You know, I think they're trying, but they're not there yet. How do you fit that mammoth task within the current structure of the tourist board? I don't understand. Secondly, if you see how the House of Assembly is set up, the Attorney General sits next to the Premier. You want them, you can ask the Attorney General a question and seek some advice on what you're doing based on just what Honorable Penn is saying. So there's some questions that I think needs to be answered, and to push forward and take that money from the Festival Affairs Committee where it should be really, and putting it in the hands of another entity is a very, very dangerous road that the Premier is going down. And I want to caution him to come and do the right thing. Repeal the bill. If you want to repeal it, there's a procedure that you know to repeal that bill. You can then amend the Tourist Board legislation if you wish to include those things, if that's what you want to do. But what you're doing right now is illegal. And I would urge him to check himself and revisit that decision.
Gentlemen, on the matter of festival, and this is my final question. The United States Virgin Islands recently announced that May 3rd, they will be having the return of horse racing to St. Thomas. As a matter of fact, they listed an exorbitant amount as their prize earnings. I'm going to start with the Honorable Minister for the third because his district happens to lie in what we would know as the mecca of horse racing. But on a larger scale, the question is open to all of you. While we're not comparing the United States Virgin Islands, we would not dare compare their level of funding when it comes to certain projects. We can compare culture. We've lost quite a bit to the United States Virgin Islands on the hospitality front during COVID. Are we about to again lose horse racing?
Sir, we about to again lose horse racing again, like we lost it before. Or are you talking about? Is it a continuum?
Correct. It's a
It's a
continuous effort.
continuum.
I'm comparing the fact that we've lost so much more, and it seems as though we're about to lose it again.
Well, there's no question that horse racing is very important to the territory. If if you don't if you don't know it, you just talk to the business people, the business community, whether it's car rentals or hoteliers, restaurateurs, and even the average man on the street who don't even go to the race but benefits from people who come to see the horses run. And this is a problem that's been going on for a long time. It just reached a crescendo after Hurricane Irma with that track and the government. I know that when I was minister for communications and works, I and being the district representative, the premier wanted me to take over the track, and I said no. What I would do is I would administer the infrastructure of the track, the capital portion of the track, but as far as the business end of it, no. It's because I felt and I still feel that way that that administrative role of the track is above the pay grade of any minister who is not the premier. The type of negotiations that has to take place is not in the purview of a regular minister. So I stayed away from that, and I watched. If you look at the developments on the track itself during the time I was there, and since, you would notice that um, because I was only concentrating on the physical aspects of the track, it couldn't be matched subsequent to that. And what is happening now, from my understanding, and I know a lot about what's taking place right now. People on the street are doing a lot of talking without or should I say, with little or no knowledge of what's going on. I know what's going on, and it's still within the purview of the premier to be able to deal with the situation. I think people should be cautious with being loose and fast with their lips. I think people should be cautious with being slandering people and their names. The good families who are responsible in the track are for no reason whatsoever being ostracized among the public, and that is wrong. And I think people should commit themselves to stopping that kind of behavior. I believe that at some point the truth will come out as to what's really taking place. The government has a lot of blame in this matter. Since 2007, the grandstands have been damaged. Right? 2017, the grandstands have been damaged, and I dare you to show me any indication that government has a committed effort, interest in that racetrack, because nothing has been done to it. The running service has been decimated completely, and they're talking about the track. What has happened to the track since Hurricane Irma? One man has committed himself to having horse races at a scale that was not one that we're accustomed to. So what are we talking about? The U.S. Virgin Islands has committed themselves to rebuilding their track. Our budget is $440 plus million. Are you telling me that we can't commit X amount of dollars, which is probably less than $10 million to get our track up and running? But then you have shown absolutely no interest in the portion that you're totally responsible for, which is the capital upkeep. You show no interest in doing that. But out there on the street, you're talking about the family. The family owns the land. That's what you're concentrating on. It's wrong. That's not what we should be doing. We can afford to pay whatever is needed, put up the money, whatever is needed for that track. Right now, you heard them talking about we paying $10 million a year for rent, government rentals. Those buildings that people occupy, they're owned by private citizens. They're not owned by the government. That's why the government is paying rent. And I submit to you that for as long as you're alive, those buildings will be occupied by government, by the government of the Virgin Islands. For as long as you're alive, they're not going to give them back to the people. This building is one of them. We're sitting in a private building. You never heard anyone talk about us acquiring this building through compulsory acquisition. You never heard anyone saying that. But we go in and we build, we pay the rent. And tomorrow or the next day after tomorrow, you're going to see somebody renting another building or some space somewhere. We have to first start doing right by people. And if we do right by people, this country, you heard all the talk about the government and its lack of competence and all the rest of it about other things. This is no different. This is no different. In my district, I got messages on Sunday that there was no water since Friday. And when I contacted the government about the water situation, they told me, oh, there's a pipe broken. We're going to work on it tomorrow, which is Monday. Why aren't you working on it since Friday when it was broken? And then it got worse because they said, even after we repair it on Monday, don't expect water until maybe 3 days later, which is Wednesday. You go figure. And you're going to come tell me about horse racing. If they can't get water to people, a basic necessity, and it's up there in Paraquita Bay, the water is up there. They can't get it to people. You tell me, you think horse racing is a priority for the government? Tell me, you think it's a priority? I submit to you that it's not.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kathy Richards, JTV News. A quick follow-up on that very last question, as I had it as one of those to ask. Any of you members of the opposition, have you been given any update whatsoever by the government as it relates to the situation that started, I think, 2 years ago with the horse racing track?
Just finish that. If we have, and it's not that we don't know what's going on. We know. But it's the government who's supposed to take care of the business that's going on. We tried to bring the two parties together. We did that. But it is exactly where I told you it is. The person who has the capital to deal with the matter is the premier and no one else. None of us sitting at this table, we could talk. I ain't going to say anything regarding the matter.
And my next question, most of you would have addressed the issue, the concern, expressed concern about the escalating instances of gun crimes and violence in the territory. Do you subscribe to the notion that these crimes are beyond the current capacity of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force?
Member for a large member needs to leave, and he will say excuse, or if you need to answer a question before you leave.
Kathy, I'll answer your question before I leave. I'm leaving to catch a ferry, so my apologies. Kathy, we've sat in the House of Assembly since I have been elected, and we have allocated money to the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force for officers for the COI. We've allocated funding for them in the tune of millions of dollars to secure our ports. I think that the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force has resources. They have over, I think it's close to 300 officers. I think they have resources. As I said in my statement, I think that the approach needs to be different.
I did not say resource. I am asking if it's beyond the capacity of the Royal Virgin Islands Police Force.
But Kathy, I would defer that to the Commissioner of Police and the Governor because I am not aware of the capacity that they have in terms of their ability to handle it. I can look at, from my perspective, the resources that they have received in comparison to the resources in terms of finances that other government agencies have and departments and ministries have received.
Kathy, I can answer your question this way. Back when in the days when I was Minister of Finance, there were similar problems, similar issues. There were quite a bit of gun crimes and drug trafficking. And while you may think that it's beyond the capacity of the existing Royal Virgin Islands Police Force, I don't think it is. I think every now and then internally you need to beef up. Whenever situation arises, you go out and get additional capacity to deal with the thing that is bothering you at that point in time, so you can shut it down. So I think if the governor, who is responsible for internal security, needs resources to address crime infection in the society, I think it's quite within his responsibilities to go and seek the resources and do it. I think sometimes some of it doesn't make sense to me, what is happening, because I know when I was the minister, there will always be a need for additional security officers to come to BVI, and we never say no, because it's important to keep the society safe. That's one of the responsibilities of the governor and the Minister of Finance, basically, keep the society safe. And at whatever cost it takes to keep the society safe, we should do it. Because on an unsafe society, we all will be in trouble.
I also want to just state I don't believe there is a problem with capacity, because, like the leader opposition stated, whatever resources, whatever support is needed through the governor and the commissioner of police approved by the House Assembly, it could be made available. What I believe seemingly is happening is there's this narrative that is playing out that from the COI time, there's corruption and the BVI is a bad place and we're this and we're that and the other. Again, the names that you're being called. But where leadership comes in, because I remember from Dr. Orlando Smith's time and Ralph T. O'Neill's time, if you want a certain standard to be upheld in your territory, in your country, you would demand it from those who are responsible. So there needs to be a demand from the premier. There needs to be a louder voice from this government state, and this is what we need, and we need it curtailed. And tell me what you need. Resources from Bermuda, just like when we had the hurricanes of 2017, we had resources brought in to help with certain things. Not that we want to have the BVI be a police state, but we need to curtail some of this violence. We need to curtail some of these persons who feel that they can go out and kill persons in broad daylight, and night come, you don't feel safe in your own country. We need to address these issues, and we need to address it quickly, rapidly, so that the people of the BVI's reputation is not lost any further to this crime and violence.
Yes. since the last press conference that you would have had, has there been an increased involvement of the opposition in the processes that are being employed for the implementation of the COI recommendations?
Press conference, we met with the governor. I met with him in the governor. I met with him individually. I met with the governor and the minister when they were here, and we passed a resolution in the House to create a committee to look after the implementation of the COI, which the speaker is the chair. So we have been on top of basically trying to push the government to get what needs to be done. You know, I don't think every single item is going to be completed by the end of May, because some of it is practically impossible for it to be completed. For example, if you take the amendment to the Constitution, which I disagree with the COI, because the recommendation of the amendment to any constitution is a decision for the people, and not no one single COI person. That is wrong. You know, so that's going to take a bit longer, and there are about one or two other items going to take a bit longer. Okay. I just want to, at this point, thank the listening audience, thank the media, Grant, the Beacon, Kathy, and Groverberry Media for their questions. And I want to say we miss Zan. I think he's listening. He should have called in and asked a few questions, but it's too late now. Don't try. I want to thank the people in the media, people who manning the cameras and the computers, and for their support here this afternoon. And my colleagues, I want to thank you, the people of the Virgin Islands, from Antigua to Josh Van Dyke, for your support for all of us, whether it's district or at large. So we thank you for having us here. We're going to try to do the best job we possibly can. And if it means moving voter no confidence against the government in your interests, we will do so. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.